We are excited to have our next speaker with us. Lilach, are you?
I'm here.
Hi, thanks for
Hello.
joining us.
Thank you for having
Hi, we just wanted to put up your beautiful slide and ask you all sorts of questions about how did you get into this industry? And is your passion building brands for companies?
Yes. How did I get into this industry? This is kind of an interesting story. I moved to the United States 14 years ago, and my husband is an ear physician, and I have seen how many people come to the ER for chronic pains and issues. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to open a wellness center and really have a holistic approach to care. But then I ran the business plan and there was no money in it. So I dropped it. And cannabis came up on the ballot in Arizona 3 months later. So I thought this would be great. I can open my wellness center and have cannabis, which I always believed in, and just combine the two, which I did. So this is how I stumbled into this industry.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us today and having a little bit of a marketing background with brand building. What we tend to do at CANNA World Expo is explain how to build a brand and how to maintain a brand compliantly, because non-compliance will take your company and your brand out in a second. So
Absolutely.
what types of products do you support at your wellness center? Have you seen growth during the global health crisis? How are things going there?
Yeah, so we are vertically integrated, which means we grow, we extract, we retail, we wholesale, and we distribute. So we really get to experience every aspect of this industry. So for us, way from the beginning, we knew that cannabis is a commodity, and it's like comparing a corn to a corn. If you don't connect the consumer with some kind of emotion, you're just going to be part of that race to the bottom and trying to compete with price. As a small business, which not many of us left in this industry, we thought, creating that brand is what's going to bring us value. So we have focused on that from the beginning, really that long-term value of branding. So we have our retail store, and that is one brand that has its own kind of personality, and we're really focused on personal customer experience and education, and that is kind of our niche. And in there we have our own brands, but we also carry 80 other brands. So that's on the retail side. And then we have our wholesale side, which is product that we produce and then we sell to other dispensaries. So we get to do the distribution and the wholesale side and the sales side and the brand ambassador side and that whole world of creating value for the brands. So we really do get to see both sides.
Great. And I do have a presentation that was provided. Would you like me to share that,
Sure.
or do you have it available easily that you could share?
Um, Either way, I can probably just share it on my end.
Okay.
Am I sharing? Can you guys see it?
Yes. Yes, we can see it.
All right, great. So my goal is to go over this. It's only 10 slides. It's pretty quick, but really just trying to discuss the importance of thinking about cannabis in terms of brands and how to get there. So I will go over this, and at the end, if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. So really, what are we talking about? Building a brand versus selling a commodity. Cannabis is a commodity. And we can all see right now, especially when it's growing so much, that a commodity has value, but it connects to price. That means if there's no emotion and no connectivity between what you're selling and the consumer, they're only going to compare it with price. There's no loyalty to commodity. It's the same corn again, it's the same cannabis. brands connect with emotions, and commodity connects with prices. And that is what everybody in the cannabis industry needs to start focusing on with creating these brands. As humans are emotional creatures, um, you know, the best brands trigger that emotion. It could be just with a logo. And if you look at the brand side, all of these logos create some kind of emotion for us. And it doesn't matter what it is, but it creates an emotion. And that is what creates that long-term relationship and that loyalty to the brand. So what is the recipe for a successful brand? Your brand always have to think about the three things of how do you make people feel? How do you create that emotion, right? Um, you have to think of who are they? Who are the people you're trying to reach? Who are you talking to? What's their persona? It's like when you talk to a friend, there's different ways you talk to your parents and your friends. This is what your brand has to have, that language of who you are focusing on. How do you make them feel? Again, that is so important with brands. It's how do you create the need for them to get up and go get your product? How do you get them to choose that product off the shelf? This is what is so important with making them feel like they need it, they want it, they connect with it. It was meant for them. This is part of their lifestyle. And then, the offering, how do you create consistency with your brand, which we know it's in the works in our industry, but creating consistency, creating quality product, creating a product that has something different, organic versus non-organic, all those things that again, creates some kind of emotion and connectivity for your client. So the ultimate commodity, I've said it a few times, but corn, right? When you go to the grocery store, a corn is a corn. And there's some things that can be different, local versus non-local, organic versus non-organic. You can distinguish it that way, and that might be a way to choose which corn you're going to pick. But at the end of the day, for corn, it's a corn and it's pricing. So unless you put it in a different package and tell a story behind that corn, no one's going to really notice the difference, and no one's really going to be paying much more for it. And this is really not where you want to be, right? You want to be a brand that is not related to price. It's related to that emotion that people are willing to pay more for. So I wanted to kind of show what I mean by a brand versus commodity. So if it's just the commodity choice, which is this white widow versus that white widow, the decision making is price. This is price and availability, right? If both are at the same store, then you choose by price. If not, if you really want white widow, you will get it, and the two strains will compete. Two brands will compete just around pricing. So once people put it into packaging and there is a story behind it, and of course the packaging is part of it, the design, but also knowing that this white widow from this brand will always be the same one that you like, this is when you create that value that commodity does not have. Between two growers, there is not much different. And then you can take it to the next level and think about all the products. And it could be vapes, and it could be capsules, and it could be wax, anything that is a product of cannabis. There's capsules, and then there's branded capsules. And once you get used to trying and using and figuring out the brand that you like, you're not going to say, I want capsule. You're going to say, I want Kindred. And this is really the different choices. And this is where you want to take the value of your brand and creating that with cannabis. It is very important to create a story. I think all of us kind of connects with a story of a brand. So you can take the capsule and then you put the story behind it. What's your values? What's your mission? Who started it? Why did you start it? What's your goal? How do you treat your people? Who works for you? all those things that people really like to be a part of is something that you really want to create behind it. So don't just put it in a capsule and put your sticker on it and create it a brand, but really create a personality for your brand. So standing out from all the other noise, and in this industry, we go ups and downs with the different issues that we have to deal with, but overall, we're in a good spot because we're just starting. Competition does come, and it is starting, and it's growing, and it's getting uncomfortable at times. And what you have to make sure you do is to up your brain game, right? If you create emotions, they create a reason for someone to make sure they got your product and your brand. This is when you win, when everyone has. There's so much cannabis out there and so many capsules and so many vapes, and in every category, there's so much competition. The only way to stand out is really create that brand that has that emotion connection, the quality, the consistency, the long-term value that people want to create. So the long-term goals versus short-term profit. This is have been a very interesting thing for me in the industry, when so many times when you talk about sales and how to increase sales, and people first and foremost, and sometimes the only thing they say is buy one get one. Let's do sales. Let's reduce pricing. Let's compete there. And competing on price is one thing, and doing special is important, of course. But you have to focus on the long term value of your brand and how to really get there and how to maintain it. And that is not just by every time you want to increase sales, reduce prices, or create BOGOs. That is not what will create that long term value of the brand. So once you create that consistency and the brand persona and the value of your brand and your story, you have to stick to it. You have to remember that it might be that other people are selling more units, but in the long term, they are going to become the commodity because they're only competing over price. If you create that long term value, that connection, that loyalty will continue to increase to a value that is much higher than today's. And that is very important to focus on when you talk about brands. You have to communicate that value to your customers, because once you talk about it and make sure they understand what you bring that is different than the competitors, they remember it. And if you look at the large brands from other um, industries, they do it all the time. If it's advertising, or if it's stories, or if it's videos, if it's reviews that they share with you, really making sure people don't compare White Widow to White Widow, but White Widow to your kindred brand. So just a quick review of everything. Cannabis is a commodity, and it's a plant. And until you turn it into a brand, you will continue to have a commodity. And commodity, again, competes on price. It does not compete on loyalty. And unless you want to be part of that race to the bottom that will happen in every single market, you have to make sure you have a brand that people connect with. Strains are not brands, and I hear that over and over again when even our customers that walk into the store and want a certain brand. That's great, but that same strain, 10 different growers are growing it just in Arizona. And this is when you have to make sure you know that you want to put that White Widow into a different packaging that will differentiate you. So make sure you're not just thinking about the strains that you're growing and how you're going to win a cup for it, because even when you win a cup, you have to make sure that's connected to your company name and not to the strain. Uh, you have to focus on on the long-term goal. You have to focus to know that it takes time. You have to make sure that you silence the noise to really keep each other accountable with your whole team on what that brand is and where you want to be and how you're going to get there, because that is the only way that everybody kind of rolls in the same direction to get you there. It takes longer to build a brand and create that loyalty than to have cannabis for cheap. But this is what will win at the end. And I'm not saying that all brands needs to be high end when I say that. I'm just saying it's okay to have the cheap brands, but even with between the different levels, there's always going to be a brand decision, even between the different price points. So make sure people know your name, know where you stand for, know the people that stand behind it. What do you stand for? What are your values? Are you a give back company? Who created it? Who's the founder? All those things that people are get that connection with and communicate them to them. If you have a brand in any category, right? For us, we have capsule brand, we have the retail brand, we have the flower brand, and it's all different persona and different values and different story behind it. But all of them really really focus on long-term value. We focus on creating a company that's fun to work in. All of them are give back companies, and that creates that loyalty of customers and also the consumers. And that's really what I recommend to any cannabis brand to do. And that's what I constantly preach in our industry. And I hope other people understand the value of that. I want to keep 10 minutes for any questions anyone have, so we can review it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate the information that you have. I actually have some questions from some panelists and audience members as well. Tasha, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Tasha, I know that you had some questions for our special guest. Would you care to go ahead and ask some questions? And then I'm going to pass it also over to Mr. Charles Horton for his questions as well.
Thank you so much. I have two questions for you. The first question is, what would your recommendation be to create a brand that makes people feel safe in order to eliminate stigma? So I'm kind of asking you to give some consulting advice here. So
that's what I'm here for.
You give away as much as you want or as little as you want. But I think that that's incredibly important because there are brands out there now that people may not have that trust with yet, and they are looking to find that trust, and they may need that trust. And then there may be brands that are just starting. And so I know that is a question that the answer could be very beneficial. And then, if they want to learn more, of course, then they would contact you. But, let's help some people to get started.
Yes, absolutely. I think, the stigma of our industry, if you think about it, it really comes from not being educated, not understanding it, thinking of cannabis as old world weed, people smoking joints during the day and not doing anything. And I even have that, right? When I tell people what I do for a living and people say like, so you use cannabis? And I say, yes. They're like, I would never think about you as a stoner. And that is the ultimate stigma, right? It's like unbelievable for people to really understand that this is a plant that can be part of people's lifestyle. And most of us are, very successful and active professionals, and we use cannabis, and it's okay. And people have been doing it for decades and centuries. So for a brand to really focus on creating that safe environment, that welcoming environment, and starting to change the stigma is all about education. Start with talking about lifestyle. Start with showing the personas that are using cannabis, reviews of this, my dad is sleeping for the first time in 40 years kind of thing, really makes a person think like, oh, maybe my dad should use it. All those different things that we all know if you're in a cannabis industry or a cannabis user, other people don't know. So we have to start with open discussions and education. And that could be about what is the product, how to use it, how to not overuse it. Really matching, being part of your consumer's journey. So know their lifestyle, know how to recommend different product for a lifestyle, and opening their eyes to say, well, this is night, this is day, this is microdosing, this is a capsule versus a gummy. What does it mean? All those things that when you're in the industry or you're a user, it just makes sense. But for the consumer, it's not. So it's important to communicate as much information as possible.
And then in your center, do you have that kind of education? Do you have I don't know, like seminars, classes? Do you invite the community?
All the time. So we really focus on that. We used to have a dedicated place for all classes, but now our dispensary is different. But we do complimentary one-on-ones, which is often not one-on-ones, right? It's the person that brings his friend or his grandma and really wants to know everything. And if you walk into a dispensary for the first time, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So we have a training for our consultants to make sure they know, like, ask them, listen to them, and then narrow down to 3 product instead of the 300 when they walk around by themselves. It's very hard to do that. We have events with the community if anyone has questions. There are groups that wants to do training and education for their employees, for, it could be mothers of young children that cannot shut it off and sleep and want to come listen and hear about us. So many different people that wants to hear more, and we are always welcoming and always open. And this is our why. It's really changing what people think about cannabis and improving their well-being. So it actually, it's great because you get to do what you love and also grow the business.
And then you kind of rolled the 2 questions that I had all together into one. So that worked out perfect, actually. So where is your center? I also live in Arizona. So, hey, neighbor.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, because I was thinking, hey, I can stop by and hang out with you and see,
Please do.
Yeah. About and everything.
You had my contact there, so please do. We are in North Phoenix, so Union Hills and 7th Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah. And anyone comes to Phoenix, yeah, please do. Yes.
Well, like I said, I had 2 questions, and my one question you answered both in one. So thank you so much. I think Charles has some questions for you.
Great.
Thank you, Tasha. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well.
About 2 years ago, back when we did live conferences, I was listening to a venture capitalist talk about look for the companies that are really making their brands. So my question to you, because I agree with both you talking about brands and them, but because we're so restricted with interstate commerce and we have to grow and manufacture all of our own products generally within the same state, do you think you need to focus just on creating a brand within one state, or do you need to go for a national branding?
So it's a great question. And it is one of those things that people don't understand, how it makes cannabis even more complicated as a business. And this is just one example. So for us, we wanted to prove a concept. And I think it's very important to know that this is where we start, and we need to do our SOPs, and we need to make sure that the customer love it and we grow it. And it's now we're at 60 stores in Arizona. So we are now ready to have that conversation with other states. But it took 3 years to get there. So I wouldn't go for let me try to get those deals with other states before you really know where you're focused on, how you can help, what's your marketing strategy, what's your SOPs for creating the brand, the packaging, the everything that really needs to be part of a package of a brand, and be comfortable with it before you start reaching out. Because we can't just transport, you have to have partnerships, and partnerships are complicated and they add layers of trust. Which is great if you find the right partnership and you find people that connect with the brand, then I think it's a win-win. But often in our industry, it doesn't work that smooth. So I think what going for the national brand, I think it is a goal. And as you're at it, you can say international, global brands. But I think you have to be patient and really make sure your procedures and policies are very tight and working before you go for those licensing deals with other states, because it will have to be someone else producing it, packaging it, and distributing it.
Thank you, and I wish you the very best in your business.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for joining us on CANNA World.
Absolutely.
It's been wonderful. I'd like to ask you a question as well. What's your opinion on the brands that are attempting to be kind of everything to everyone versus just like target marketing?
I love marketing and I love creating brands. And one of the most important thing is knowing that you do have a target market. If you think about coffee, it's anyone that drinks coffee. But no, the successful brands know who the persona that they're going for. And I think cannabis has to be the same. You have to know your target market, and everything you do, every message that you put out there has to connect with that target market. And once you do, is when people see you and connect with you for that level. When you're not honest and you're not real because you're trying to do it all, that's when the customer knows. They can feel it. They understand that you're not real, and they're not going to connect with you.
And how about something along the lines of CBD as a cure-all versus specific formulations as well, because we know that everybody's putting out there that this is this is the cure-all for everything.
Everything, yeah. I think it's important to remember that cannabis is a journey, and there's wonderful properties for this plant, but it's not a cure for all. And I would stay away from cure in general. I think we have to be very mindful of how we present our products and not promise false promises to anyone about what this is going to do for them. It is important to know that, the different things that people are trying to achieve needs different product. So educate, the people that work for you, educate the customer with as much information as they can give about this is the product and this is what it can do for you, and it can't do everything. It's just not real. You're promising false promises.
Thank you. And does your company consult for new companies, new brands entering the market?
Yeah, so we do actually. What we have been doing in the past is we have the operation experience and a list of what not to do when you start. Because when we started, we had to learn, by making mistakes, and so we do have that in our background. And what we do mostly for new markets and new companies is we team up with them and give them everything we know, from the licensing portion of it to start up and push through the first couple of years, just to give them all the experience we have. It's been great. We have partnerships in Puerto Rico and Ohio and Israel, and it's been working really great.
Thank you so very much for joining us. So as we wrap up now, would you kindly please tell our audience how they may contact you?
Yes, I had my contact information on the slide. So this is my email, and you can also find me on Instagram if you need to. But email is always a great way to.
Well, not everybody is actually seeing this, so let's actually let the audience know.
Yeah, so my Instagram is Lilach Mazor Power, which is LilachMazorPower, and my email is Lilach LilachACH@givingtreeaz.com.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this inaugural, our first year around the sun journey with Canna World. It is a pleasure to have you. Thank you. And we are going to be moving into our next special guest. Oh boy, everyone, you are definitely in for a treat. I have had the pleasure of knowing Mr. Cecil, and I have experienced some of his incredible training and presentations, and he is always quite the character. I'm going to pass this over to Denise for a moment here, and I know she has some information that she would like to bring up. Darren, are you with us, please?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Perfect.
Hear you now. Thank you. Kind of like Verizon. Denise, are you with us as well?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, Darren. It's wonderful to have you at CANNA World Expo. Thank you for joining us. A lot of people are in the cannabis industry. We've heard that this is an essential service. So your expertise in sales optimization will certainly empower business owners to reach out to more clients, more patients. And I have one question for you, sir. Sales. I'm on the marketing end of the equation. Sales, I know that it's an art. And could you please share with the audience? I came across this photo and I was mystified by how captivating your messages are to audiences. Would you care to explain?
Well, I noticed you placed me in the afternoon time slot for people having lunch. So maybe you brought me on so people can continue a siesta. So I do appreciate that. And I would like to say that in fairness to that slide, one of my colleagues that I was going over some PowerPoint slides for a presentation this week, it was in the middle of the night in Paris. And so perhaps I'm better at it than one may think, but you know, who really knows? But I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have a conversation. And I would say that perhaps people can decide for themselves if I'm a decent speaker. Is that fair, Denise?
That is fair.
So what you're telling me is you have captivated audiences around the world.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for captivating our audience. That was priceless. You are not going to put us to sleep. I promise the audience you guys can engage and really get some tips on what this buyers and sellers dance is.
Yes, actually, Absolutely. And in fact, Darren, you're actually the perfect person to have at this time slot because you are such a captivating presenter and speaker. So
thank you.
take it away, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Darren Cecil. My company is Enrich Sales. What I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, I know none of you have any sales challenges at all. And there used to be a slogan that was called, friends don't let their friends drive drunk. So I want to have friends don't let their friends have sales challenges. And so towards that end, I would like to talk about the buyer-seller dance. You see, salespeople have a system. Even if it's called fly by the seat of your pants, salespeople still have a system. I want to share what that is. I want to share what the buyer system is. And then I want you to decide which do you think is more powerful. And then maybe 1 or 2 tips on how to change that dance. Okay. And why is a dance important? A dance is important because whoever leads the dance controls the rhythm, the pace, the movement, all sorts of things. In a lot of times, if you like to dance, you probably know more than I do. I'm not very good at it, but nevertheless, I'm good at demonstrating this. So this is, I'm very grateful to the work of David Sandler by talking about the buyer-seller dance. And I want to share this with you. So the first thing salespeople do when they find a suspect, they're not a prospect, they're a suspect, is we qualify them. And you probably do a really good job of qualifying. However, do you ever get these calls in your work or at home going, congratulations, you've won a no obligation free estimate on the whatevers, right? If you can fog a mirror, you're pretty much qualified, right? But you do a really good job of qualifying. Yet, however, most people don't. You breathe, you're qualified, right? So you qualify someone. And then someone's like, oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? I really need what you have. So the next thing you do is you present. And you are such an engaging presenter. I mean, you could pass out popcorn and snacks and they're captivated. It's almost award-winning material. Why? Because you're so good at presenting what you know, which is your product or your service. And they are sitting there looking like they had just seen an Academy Award film. And then what you do is you win for the close. Oh my gosh, it's very exciting. And they sign on the dotted line 100% of the time. Isn't that true? Well, probably not. And what happens is, what do? They object. But that's okay because you overcome objections because you've read these books. 25 ways to overcome objections, 15 ways to get someone to say yes when they want to say no. Do you ever read any of this garbage? It's horrible. Because on page 7, if you say to me your price is too high, I'm supposed to say compared to what? It doesn't even make sense, right? But you overcome an objection and they give you another objection and you overcome that objection. Here's a hint. There's only one person that can overcome an objection. It's the person that raises it himself or herself. So stop reading these books, right? They're not effective. Think about how you can reframe conversation so they can see for themselves why they should move forward with you. But what happens is they object, you overcome, they object, you overcome, they object, you overcome. And I ask when I do this in front of large audiences, people say, I want to punch them in the face, they want to punch me in the face, or I want to leave, or they want to leave. If that's your selling system that ends in violence, I think we may have a challenge. But once again, you don't have these challenges. We know people that do. So we're learning this for our friends and our colleagues, right? And so this system has been around forever and a day. Perhaps it predates the invention of fire by 32 years. This thing has been around forever. But at some point, somewhere along the line, came buyers, and they were skeptical of salespeople. So they created their own system for self-protection. And so the first thing a buyer does is lie. Think about it. If they come into the dispensary and you say, may I help you with something? They say, no, thank you, just looking. They can't even tell you why they're there. Why? I'm going to get psychological on you for 48 seconds. There's something called transactional analysis. There's 3 tapes in our heads. There's an adult, a parent, and a child tape. and the parent, the child tape shut off. We were about 9 years old, 11 years old. And so as a kid growing up, I was told growing up in Boston, never to talk to strangers. Why? Because they could hurt me, right? Stranger danger. I have 3 children, and my second grandchild was just born a couple of days ago. And I was wondering if you're going to show that slide when that baby was sleeping. So thank you, Jessica, for not showing that one of another example of me putting someone to sleep. So if I have a moment, I'll share a story at the end that brings it all home.
You are so welcome, Darren.
Thank you, Jess. I really appreciate it. So what happens is we lie. Our buyers lie. Someone says, how often do buyers lie? Only when they're awake. And they're not bad people. They're just protecting themselves. There used to be a game show called Password. If I were to get you to say the word password, the word salesperson, what are some words you might say? Probably conniving, slimy, annoying, pushy. Do your parents ever tuck you in at night? Did they ever say, we're so proud of you, we love you, you can be anything you want when you grow up? You can be a doctor, you can be a teacher, you can be an athlete, you can be a mom, you can be a dad, but most of all, we hope you have a rewarding career as a salesperson. Because what do we think of salespeople? Slimy, pushy, annoying. You see why we don't trust salespeople? Someone told me at a networking event, what do you do when women hit on you at networking events? I go, that happens never. But if it did, I would simply try to sell them a mortgage or life insurance. Just start selling somebody something, they will walk away fairly quickly. So the first thing the buyer does is lie because they want to protect themselves. And then after they lie, they steal. They steal your information. They steal your pricing. They steal whatever your intellectual capabilities, your proprietary information, they steal. And then after that, they mislead. They mislead. So I'm actually looking for a car with my youngest son. And typically we will mislead. You know what? We're really not ready to make a decision today. We may come back. We're not sure. And then what happens is once a salesperson gives away their information, I go into hide mode. So there's the system: lie, steal, mislead, and hide. So years ago, I've had the privilege of training people in lots of places and lots of countries. And I probably have trained people for probably like 20, 25 countries around the world, not traveling there, but training people from those places. And years ago, I trained 4,000 people for the Super Bowl, and I thought it was really good because people told me how good I was. And I got a ton of contracts, actually, that I could start my business. And so anyway, this huge company, I won't reveal the company, said, we love you. We want to talk with you about training our whole company. And we want you to meet with our vice presidents. When we love you, you're going to travel the world. I was so excited. I think I went out and bought a new suit. I had socks that matched. I had a PowerPoint presentation. If that didn't work, remember the old plastic overheads? I had those, and I had handouts, and I rocked it. Why? Because at the end they said, you were so good. We didn't realize how good you are. You were better than good. What's the first thing they did to me? They lied. And then they said, you know what? See this chair? It belongs to the vice president so-and-so. Give us a week. We're excited to work with you. And then they lied again. And then I called back in a week going, hey, it's Darren, excited to work with you. And I don't hear anything on that following Monday. So I don't want to wait and call the next day because I sound too desperate. So I wait till Wednesday. And I say, I just want to make sure there wasn't any last minute questions on the whatever and make something up. I don't hear anything on Thursday. And on Friday, I make a choice. I've gone from someone that brings value to the marketplace to someone that looks and feels like a pest. And I don't want to call. And if I don't call, it ruins my weekend with my family. And on Monday morning, I don't call. I take that person's business card from my yes pile and move it to my no pile. And I say, how the heck did that happen again? See, what happened was they took my information and they trained their people with my material. I had become what I would call an unpaid consultant. And I ask you, how hard or how easy might it be for you to cash your unpaid consultant check at the bank so you can pay your mortgage, right? Lie, steal, mislead, and hide. So what I'd like to do, Jessica, I'd like to ask some people, if people want to just shout out, or you can answer for them. Do anybody out there, do your prospects lie to you, or is it just my world? And what does it sound like?
Well, the thing is, we've got
people on Facebook and we've got Zoom and all this stuff going on, but oh yeah, I mean, I know in industries that I've dealt with, absolutely.
Okay.
You've got the stealing going on, you've got the misleading going on, and definitely the hiding. And gee, I think I've kind of definitely, I mean, I know like the whole car story that you mentioned and stuff, you know, most people take information and go and, you know, you go car shopping and,
That's right.
you
That's
know.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
And it happens in every industry I've ever been involved in. And you name the industry, I have worked in it, right? And it happens in every industry, in every country I've ever spoken to. And it's something that permeates all of it. And we're not bad people. So one time, Jessica, I was doing this presentation in front of a lot of CEOs, and there's a gentleman in the back in my training center in San Diego that I think he may have had Tourette syndrome or just something, but he decided he was going to drop a bomb. And he said, "Holy smokes, I can't believe our people ever sell a damn thing." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Can I come up in the front?" I was like, "Yes." So he ran up like he was the next contestant on The Price is Right. And he said, "Can I see your marker?" I'm like, "You want my marker?" He goes, "Yes." He said, "Darren, if my people are trying to qualify you and you're lying, who wins?" And I said, "Well, let's ask the room." And they yell, "The buyer, also known as the liar." I go, "Yes." He said, "If my people are presenting and you're stealing from us, who wins?" And I said, "Audience," they go, "The buyer. They steal your information. They steal your pricing. They steal your intellectual property. They steal all sorts of things. They steal your time." And then you want to have some fun, tell people that they don't get paid by the hour anyway, so it doesn't really matter. They're not stealing their time. That's really fun to watch them get upset with. He really enjoyed me saying that. He goes, "No, my people are wasting time because they have so many more things they could do, Darren." I'm like, "I totally get you." Just having some fun, right? Having some fun, trying to keep them all awake, right? And then he said, "If my people are trying to close you, Darren, and you're misleading and hiding, who wins?" And I go, "Audience, the buyer." I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "I can't believe we ever sell a damn thing. I think they just like what we have. And maybe we have a bunch of order takers." And I go, "Oh, can I piss you off more?" He goes, "Oh, please do." I said, "Okay." I said, "Out of qualify, present, close, what do your salespeople like to do the most?" He goes, "Oh, present without a doubt." And then people are like, "No, it's closed. It's closed." They're all yelling, "Close, it's closed." He goes, "All right, it's closed." I go, "No, you know what? You're right. It's present." And he said, "Why is that?" And I said, "Well, a couple of reasons. One, when you trained them, you brought them away to presentation school and they learned all about whatever your product or service does. They spend so much time, usually in New Jersey for some reason. That seems to be the big place. It's usually 2 weeks. 9 days is talked about what the product does. The 10th day is people are hungover and maybe they get an hour on how to sell, right?" And I said, "So it's present because people love to present." Why? They get to demonstrate how smart they are, or they get to demonstrate how they can solve your challenges. You see, most salespeople, I hate to tell you this, sir, most salespeople are not money motivated. They're need for approval motivated. And so he's like, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." I said, "Now watch this." I said, "Out of lie, steal, mislead, and hide, what do you think is the number one goal of the buyer?" And I asked the audience, and there was, people just raised their hands. And I said, "It's steal, because they want your information." Why? As Jessica said, they can leverage it against other companies. Hey, they're going to do it for this. Will you do it for that? The person that spoke before talking about value, if you only sell on price, you will lose on price because someone will always do it cheaper, right? And so, yes, you have to create the value. And I'll tell you how you're going to create it in just a second, right? So the number one goal of the buyer is to steal. So all day long, salespeople are presenting. All day long, buyers are stealing. It's a marriage made in heaven. It will never, ever end. And he goes, "Oh my gosh." And so I ask people, "How do you feel about this?" And they go, "Oh, I can't, it's horrible. It's disgusting. Oh, I can't believe they do this to us. This is wrong. This is horrible." And I said, "Let me ask you a question. How many of you do this when you buy things?" Like, "Yeah, but that's different. They're unscrupulous. I have to protect myself, but I'm a church going person. I'm a nice person. I give to charity. They should not have to do this to me." And I'm like, it's a system. that everybody uses. Not everybody, but most people use. So I want to give a couple of tips, if I may, on ways to get rid of it. The first one is you want to establish rapport with your prospect up front. Here's the best thing I can suggest you do. On every sales call and in every meeting, on whatever you have, always ask for help about your personal life. People love to help people are afraid to ask for help. And in sales, if you want to be valuable, be vulnerable. And so I might say, hey, Jessica, I know you live in the Vegas area. I've got clients in Vegas. I don't suppose you can recommend a good place to have dinner. Could you? And either Jessica's going to say, I know Vegas so well, go to this place. I know the owners. Tell them Jessica sent you. Now, she doesn't really care if I go. She wants to demonstrate she's better than me, and that's okay with me, right? And then the next thing she might do, or she'll say, hey, you know what? I know the owners. Tell them that I sent you. They're really nice people. Now, she really wants to make sure I have a good time. It doesn't matter. She gets to refer a person for me for dinner. It can be about directions. I live in Southern California. Everybody thinks they have a Dakota ring, how to get to someplace in Southern California, right? It can be about directions. It can be about children. My children have been gold mines over the years. My son received professional pitching lessons from former Major League Baseball players, right? And soccer tips and all sorts of things. And I'll tell you how quickly asking for help can make money. So I had a client that was told he had 15 minutes to meet with the CFO. The CEO was making him, but the CFO said, I don't want anything to do with this person. He said, that's okay. Give him 15 minutes. So he did. And he called me up and he said, what am I supposed to do? I said, let's go on LinkedIn. He said, why? I said, we need to ask for help. That's what you're going to do in the 15 minutes because he hates you. I mean, he absolutely hates you. So we got to fix that. And so I said, there it is. He said, what's that? I said, well, my daughter's looking at college options and one could be the Naval Academy. And he went to the Naval Academy. So you say, I don't suppose you can give me a tip. I have a friend whose daughter's looking for the Naval Academy as a possible option. Can you give me some suggestions? They talked for probably 30 minutes about the Naval Academy. And then the salesperson that I instructed what to do said, you know what, I've taken all your time. I am so sorry I've taken all your time. And the guy goes, hey, wait a minute, before you go, tell your friend's daughter to apply for the Naval Academy. It's the single best thing I've ever done in my life. And when you walked in, I didn't want anything to do with you, but something changed. And I want to listen to what you have to say. That asking for help was a multi-million-dollar deal. And I can tell you, I did a 2-day training in Shanghai and one in Germany before COVID. And with these techniques and these tools and getting over the buyer-seller dance, one gentleman closed a $150 million deal and one gentleman closed a $105 million deal. So my clients have closed over $1 billion in sales over the years. And it's understanding the buyer-seller dance. Then the last thing I'll give you as a tip is I believe selling is a lot like dating. On every date, you have a right to say yes and you have a right to say no. In every game, there's ground rules. Have ground rules for the sale that you say, if it's not a good fit, would you feel comfortable telling me no? And they'll be so empowered. They'll be like, I'll tell you no all day long. And you do this up front after you ask for help. And then you'll say, you know what? We're not all things to all people. If I don't think what I have will bring value to you, are you okay if I tell you no? Now, some people say that's blasphemy. Not everyone's a client. Not everyone's a client. And it gives you the chance to say no. Why? It builds up so much integrity that now you have. If I say I get to tell you no, I'm looking out for your best interest. If I don't say that, I'm looking out for my own best interest. And the last thing you can say is, if you think what I have makes sense, would you feel comfortable telling me yes, you'd like to look at next steps, and you and I can discuss what those next steps look like. I mean, that is a way to get rid of the lie, steal, mislead, and hide. Why? Because they're going to give you a yes or no at the end of the meeting. And to think it over. So my son is 2 years old. He said to his mom, Mom, can we go to SeaWorld? And she said, let me think about it. He burst into tears. He said, no, Mommy, think it over means no. I used to be on the radio every night and gave a 1-minute sales tip. So my 2-year-old son said, I'm Darren Michael Cecil. I asked my mom, can we go to SeaWorld? She said, let me think about it. And my son said, no, Mommy, think it over means no. He told the story and he said, even a 2-year-old knows that think it over means no. Why don't you call my dad? This is his number. So as you can see, there's a buyer-seller dance. You have to figure out who's going to be leading. And when you say, You get to tell me no. They think they're in complete control, but you know what? They're playing by your rules. Whoever makes the rules wins the game. So that's what I would like to lead by. Oh, and the other thing, how do you create value? I'm going to tell you, people make changes in their life for two reasons: to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And the most compelling reason why people change in their lives is to reduce or avoid pain. And the best salesperson out there is a doctor. If you want to close more business, think about how a doctor would sell. They ask a ton of questions before they make a recommendation. If not, to be sued for medical malpractice. I'll tell you, business people commit business malpractice every day. They're solving the symptom and not the real problem. So this is my contact information. If people want to get a hold of me, and I will say at the end what my phone number is, probably the best way to do that, or email. So that's the buyer seller dance. If you understand there's a system put in place and understand it's not you, it's not personal, you need to figure out how you're going to destroy that dance, because it will destroy people's ability to sell. Jessica, thank you so very much.
Darren, thank you so very much. It is always a pleasure. And I'm going to go ahead and have you stop screen sharing.
Okay.
Oops. Oh, I accidentally hit the wrong one. I accidentally turned off your video. Please start it again. Oops.
Wow, I did such a good job with shutting them down.
Oh my goodness. You know what? This is what I get for like just wearing my blue blocker glasses. So now we are in the Q&A section of the program with you. There's lovely Denise. And I would like to ask you a question, if you don't mind. A few of them we have. So
wait, can I ask you a question first?
No.
I can't ask one question?
Okay, go ahead.
Is anyone asleep? Because I have a reputation that I want to uphold. And if we have time, I'd love to tell that sleep story at the end. But yes,
well, I was going to ask you, I mean, how many audiences have you put to sleep in your career? I mean,
well, I'm so glad you asked. Thank you for asking. So here's a true story. So years ago, my kids were at private school, and there's a bunch of women that like to gather together every morning and they talk. And one day, and I would, if I didn't have a gig, I wouldn't take a shower, and I'd put a baseball cap on my head and I'd drop my kids at school. And one day I was picking up my children, and this woman came over to me and said, "Do you even work? Not do you work, do you even work?" I said, "I do." And she said, "Can I ask what you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm a consultant." And she said, "Really? Would I recognize any of your clients?" I said, "Oh yeah, you probably would." And she said, "Can I ask some of your clients?" And I go, "Well, yes." But she didn't say, "What are they?" So I said, "Yes, you can ask." And then she said, "Oh, what are some of your clients?" Oh, I said, "Oh, okay. Would you like international, national, local to San Diego, the Chargers, the Padres, National Football League, American Express, Anheuser-Busch, Boeing, Honda, IBM, Toyota? Have you heard of those?" She goes, "I have." And then she said, "May I ask what you speak about?" And I go, "Now it's fun time. Like, now I'm done." And I said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Come closer." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Do you know what the biggest problem in corporate America is today?" And she said, "What's that?" And I said, "People don't get enough sleep." She said, "They don't?" And I said, "No." So they hire me, and I get paid, and I speak for 8 or 9 hours, and I look at, no one can be more boring than me. I put people to sleep, and they get restful sleep. And at the end of that time, they're very refreshed and like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." And she's like, "They pay you?" I go, "Oh, a lot of money." And then she said, "I should talk to my husband about his company." I go, "I don't think he's big enough." And so there you go. So if nothing else, I'm available for insomniacs. Yes, I can grow your sales 40 to 200%. Yes, my clients tell me they change their lives. They say it's not a sales training program. It's a life-changing program that increases sales. But move over melatonin, I could probably come in and bore the heck out of some people. That's my story, Jessica.
Love it. I do have a question from Mr. Charles Horton. Charles, are you there? Would you like to, let me see if I can get you to unmute and turn your video on, since you have a question for our guest.
Hi, Cecil. Thanks. That was a great talk. I wanted you to kind of put this into the perspective of a dispensary. At a dispensary, people are coming in, and if they're in the store, they probably don't care what the price of the product is. They came in to buy, and they're probably not leaving without buying. Tell me what sales skills would do to help a dispensary owner.
Sure. Can I ask you a question? When someone walks into the dispensary, what's the first thing that person at the dispensary usually says?
Where's the weed?
The salesperson, the one who's working the store. What do they say if I walk in your dispensary? What would someone usually say? What would you say if I walk in?
Normally, they're so busy they're ignoring you, and you have to get somebody's attention. I don't own a dispensary, so I'm just trying to put it into perspective for our viewers.
Sure. Normally, if someone says something, they'll say, "Can I help you with something?" And that triggers no thank you, just looking. Right. And then that automatically puts defense walls up. So the very first thing is that would be one, not say, "May I help you with something?" How about, "Hey, thank you so much for being here today. I'm kind of curious what brings you in here today." Totally different. Or a lot of times people say when they walk in, they want to be left alone. "Would you like to be left alone, or is there something I can assist you with?" Anything that it's a pattern interrupt, breaks the pattern would be one thing. And the other thing is, yes, they're looking to buy. The one thing that I would suggest in the dispensary world is you don't want to come across too much like the expert, because that turns people off. You tell stories, third-party stories about how you've assisted other people. And they say, "But I'm not sure that's something that's interested of you though, is it?" And what that does is, when I talk about that transactional analysis, that adult, the parent, the child tape, here's how people buy. The child tape wants to buy something. The parent tape gives permission, and the adult justifies the expense. That's how people buy. So if I say, "Hey, a lot of people are interested in this, I'm not sure you would," they automatically go, "Well, why wouldn't I?" When someone's voice becomes higher, that means their child tape is out. If you look at the way Madison Avenue advertised products, it's to get the child out. If I pop open a Coors Light, a locomotive of beautiful women will crash through my wall. That's appealing to my child. And then what happens is that's how people buy. So anything people can do to get someone emotionally involved would be very helpful. Did that help answer your question?
That was a great answer. And just as a follow-up question, you talked a lot about rapport, and I'm a big believer in teaching and using rapport with people in a dispensary environment where people want to come in and get their weed or cannabis and leave. Do you think there is a value in creating rapport, and what would that be?
It can be just something, anything that's simple that's going to allow the conversation. Because if they give you a one-word answer, they're not interested in engaging. If they start to have a conversation, then that's going to establish more rapport. So what you have to do, it's a tell. It's like playing poker. They'll give you a tell, like, can I just get what I need? Just any question at all. "Hey, I haven't been outside at all today. What's going on out there? How's the traffic?" Anything like that just gets someone to trigger, and they're like, "It's fine." Fine's an acronym I learned years ago. It means feelings in need of expression. So no reason to go bigger than that, but they'll start talking. And there's something called DISC. There's DISC. It's an assessment, and ways they give their responses, the way that you'll interact with them. And I don't have time to go into that, but if people want to, they can reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to share lots of things on bonding and connecting. If you don't bond and connect, then you're there simply as a commodity. And we learned about that earlier. We don't want to be a commodity. We want to create value. And so even by engaging with rapport, asking questions, almost like a doctor would be very helpful.
Great answers. Thank you, Darren, and I appreciated your talk.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Darren. We appreciate the humor that we have had with you. You're always great for not only incredible information, your stories and your humor are priceless. And I was looking to make sure to see if everybody is still awake with us.
Please.
And
I got a reputation uphold.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being a part of CANNA World on our 1-year anniversary today. And we look forward to seeing you.
Can I share how they can get a hold of me real quick?
One more time? Sure can.
Well, phone number is 858-752-8481, or my email is Darren, DARREN, @enrich, ENRICH, sales, SALES.com.
Thank you so very much. And
it was such a pleasure.
We'll be seeing you soon. Take care. And I'm going to hand it on over to the beautiful, incredible Denise Mahaffey.
Thank you very much. So we are now moving on to a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is marketing and brand compliance. And we'd like to invite to the podium Shada Tarabi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yay,
yes.
Thank you, Shada.
Thank you.
Glad you could join us. Woohoo!
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, you are the host of the show To Be Blunt. So thank you for joining us and for giving us a little bit of insight into your sector of the market. You do quite a lot. You're an award winner. And where are you joining us from?
I am based in Austin, Texas, my hometown. And so that's where I'm giving this presentation from. So if anybody is familiar with Texas, we are not fully recreationally legal. We have a very tiny medical marijuana program, but we have a very exciting CBD and hemp market. And I spend a lot of my time both here in Texas managing my CBD dispensary called Restart CBD, as well as operating, as you highlighted, Denise, a cannabis marketing podcast called To Be Blunt. So I have a lot of conversations at a national level as well. Should I dive in?
Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Can y'all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So again, hello everybody. My name is Shada Tarabi, and today we're going to be talking about marketing and brand compliance. So hopefully marketing is supposed to be fun. There's a lot of creative aspects that go into marketing, but obviously with cannabis, with the legality, with the regulations, there's obviously a lot of red tape and things that we should be mindful of. And that's where compliance comes in. So I'm going to dive into this presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I've included all my social handles. So if you have something that resonated with you, or you want to just shoot me a DM or go check out more content, feel free to reach out on social media. I'm at the Shada Tarabi. So if you know my name, which is right here, you'll be able to find me pretty easily. So this is me. I am the co-founder and CEO of Restart CBD. We are a women-owned, sister-owned, family-run CBD dispensary here in Austin, Texas. We were the first to open up shop 3 years ago when kind of nationally CBD was becoming legal, and then Texas became legal shortly after that. So we operate a dispensary model as well as an e-commerce platform. So I always like to just highlight kind of who I am, obviously for reference of just credibility, but also to kind of give you guys a foundation for where I'm coming from with some of my insights. But again, just kind of reflecting on being a podcast host of To Be Blunt Pod, I do have a pretty good understanding of cannabis at a national, federal level as well. And so some of those insights will be incorporated absolutely into this conversation, because I'm sure some of you are like, I'm in a legal state, I'm operating a dispensary, or maybe you are wanting to have a hemp or CBD brand. And so you're looking for, just different ways that you can work around some of these different regulations that are happening. And then kind of the final piece is I'm a content creator. I have over 20,000 Instagram followers, and I built a personal brand, which is me, Shada Tarabi. And I leverage all of these to ultimately help market and brand my business Restart, as well as the projects I'm involved in the cannabis space. So I really want to kick the discussion off because hemp versus marijuana is very different. Not only are there variations in the plant, but there's also variations when it comes to what you can transact. So like I mentioned, I'm dealing with e-commerce. Because hemp is federally legal, I can sell online. Now with COVID, I know that there's definitely some more advances in technology. I know there are certain platforms that now you can make sales from, maybe a portal to shop a dispensary and then be able to go pick up those items at the dispensary. So there's definitely nuances depending on what aspect of the industry you're playing in. And so I just kind of wanted to highlight that for everybody listening in and tuning in, just to kind of think through, reminder, whatever I'm saying, you're going to have to apply it back to what you're trying to do, what your business is in the state that you live in. And so if you don't have a good understanding of what your state's cannabis laws are, that would be a great side note for you to take, just to go get more invested into what's happening in your state. Or should you be wanting to explore into another state, because it is not federally legal from a marijuana perspective. Every state operates differently, and even hemp being federally legal, there are still variations from state to state. So again, just kind of something to keep in mind as we go through this journey. So the types of advertising allowed depend primarily on your location. So again, just kind of an emphasis, depending on where you're living and depending on what type of activities you're wanting to do, those might change. So we're going to get into product labels and social media advertising. And there's so many nuances. Like in Texas, there are certain things that our product labels have to say versus if I was selling, for example, in Florida or Oklahoma. And so everything that I'm sharing is kind of like a high level, FYI of things that you should be conscious and considerate when trying to market and brand in pertinence to being compliant. But ultimately, you got to check your local rules. That's kind of the first key thing that I think so many brands don't really consider. And so they might take, a fact or hear an article or something that happens kind of at a federal level or from another state, and it just might not even actually apply to you in your state. So the things that we're going to highlight today are your website, social media, advertising, and product labels. To me, these are kind of the 4 big pillars as a brand marketer in the cannabis space. These are, if you think about it, your real estate. This is where you are going to be communicating your brand value. And so these are the things that I really think are really important for brand marketers to be conscious of when navigating what should or shouldn't be compliant. So for me, your website is the number 1 piece of real estate that you own. Your website is your space to brand, market, and sell. And so whether, again, you are e-commerce operating in hemp or you are a marijuana business, owning your website is kind of the first piece in that puzzle. And so being able to make sure that your website is kind of all those checks and balances are checked off is really important. And so some of those things that you need to keep in mind for compliance, again, making sure that you are registered by your state to actually have an operating license. I know if you're in a legal marijuana state, for example, those regulations are a little bit more stringent versus, for example, here in Texas, we've been federally legal for 3 years, but we've been state legal for about 2 years now, and they just issued licenses a year ago. So we operated for a year without actually having to have a license, and it wasn't anything that we could do. There just wasn't a regulation for it. But now that there's a regulation for it, if you want to operate and be in compliant with the state of Texas, you need to go get your license and therefore have your license number. And those need to be included in both your website, your products, and things like that. Another key piece, contact information, just making sure that, not only can consumers understand how to contact and get a hold of you, but also from a regulatory perspective. I find so many times, people are just selling products to sell products. And so on one hand, I think it's fair to highlight, because cannabis and hemp more in particular are so unregulated, I think that people can just kind of spin up a website and they can just put products online and just sell to consumers. That to me is a big red flag. If I see a brand that doesn't have contact information or any of these key pieces of information that gives me confidence as a consumer, I don't personally want to do business with that brand. So I'm hoping everybody tuning in from a compliance perspective is because you want to be a good steward of this plant and you want to be operating in compliance. So to me, again, having accessible contact information, I always kind of live by the rule, people do business with people don't do business with businesses. And so obviously, Target and Walmart, they exist, they're major corporations, but I do think that from a cannabis perspective, people appreciate having accessibility to these brands. And so just highlighting that information already disarms, the consumer and even the government from a compliance perspective, just to know, like, hey, I'm dealing with real people. And so for us, we are a women-owned, family-owned brand. And so we incorporate that into our marketing to help establish and firm how serious we are about wanting to remain compliant and wanting to remain a good steward of this plant. The next piece is a certificate of analysis, also called COAs, also could be called lab results, test results. These are required, again, by our state for us to have on our website. Even when you're getting into working with a payment merchant or payment processor, they're going to ask for you to have COAs present on your website. And so some of these things are going to be asked of you, and some of these things are good for you just to do before someone asks you about it. So again, for us, nobody really a year ago was requiring that we displayed our COAs on our website, but it was a best practice for us to be doing that. And then now that Texas actually issued licenses, now it is a requirement that I need to have for me to be compliant, let alone give customers that confidence. Another piece, medical claims, health and safety warnings. Again, those are kind of varying things depending on what state you live in, but kind of at a high level, the notice is you can't make medical claims. You can't say that this cures anything. You can't say this is good for this or good for that. That's kind of across the board in cannabis in general. And so if you've been paying attention to some of the FDA warnings that have been coming down specifically to hemp businesses, you'll notice that they're getting dinged because they're making medical claims on their website. This tincture is going to give you, really good night's sleep. There's definitely certain semantics and ways that you can go around speaking about it. Like you can say this can help with rest, but you can't really say this can help with sleep. And so just being mindful of what those medical claims are, whether you think you're a small brand and they're only looking at big brands, I guarantee you, the internet is the internet, and there are things crawling all the time. And so we actually, one of the latest FDA warnings went out to a small local business here in Texas. And so it's not escaping anybody. And especially if you want to have a public facing brand and you want to sell to consumers, you should absolutely be conscious of what are these things that you are communicating. It's both a benefit and a curse, because on one end, you want to be highlighting all these things on your website, but at the other hand, you don't want to get caught saying the wrong thing. So I need to be mindful of those. And then the last thing I highlighted is just age verification. It's something that, again, I'm not seeing being a requirement per se to be compliant with anything, but I'm seeing more and more brands, just because cannabis consumption is really, especially in legal, medical, and marijuana states, you're seeing obviously 21 and older to purchase. In hemp, there really aren't specific regulations around age verification, but I'm seeing it as a best practice of cannabis brands and businesses. So for example, if you go to my website right now, I do not have an age verification. I am working on getting an age verification, but I'm highlighting it as that's not something that I need right now to be compliant. It's not being asked of me in my state. However, I'm going to go ahead and implement it as a good practice, as a good steward of being able to try to continue to be as compliant as possible in this industry. The next key piece I want to highlight is social media. I feel like this is kind of like the meatiest part of everything. This is where everybody, I think, gets hung up when it comes to compliance, because again, I think that we all have good altruistic beliefs when it comes to cannabis and wanting to help people find plant-based medicine. But I do think that we're all business owners, and we all want to make a profit at the end of the day. We all want to be successful businesses. And so advertising and being on social media, whether it's just having a social media presence or you're actually trying to make sales off of your social media and advertise, I think are conversations that I'm constantly having, because the shtick of it is you got to enter at your own risk. There is not, unfortunately, a clear path forward. Basically, every platform kind of has their stance for what is compliant and what is not compliant. I took some high-level kind of snippets from some of the different platforms that should be most familiar to you if you are playing on social media. I'm just going to kind of highlight some of them for y'all right now. So Instagram says buying or selling illegal or prescription drugs, even if it's allowed and legal in your region, is not allowed. So if you can imagine, I sell hemp, but hemp looks like marijuana. And just because hemp is federally legal and marijuana is not in every state, there's obviously some weird gray area. And so Instagram just takes the stance that anything that is cannabis related is not good for the platform. I'm sure you've heard of people who are getting their accounts turned off because they've created cannabis content, people who are losing their profiles, people who have spent years building up their follower account only to have their account be removed. And that is not something that, again, there's like a clear, well, it's because you posted this piece of content, or it's because you said this or that thing. It's really kind of super broad. And so on the next slide, I will go into some specific things that you can be mindful of. But the unfortunate reality is I have tried to remain as compliant as possible on my social media platforms, but I've still been flagged by Instagram for posting inappropriate or violating content. And that's just kind of the nature of it. So Google is very similar. Obviously, all these platforms have some sort of regulation against cannabis, but you obviously also see a lot of cannabis brands and businesses on these social media platforms. So it's like, how do they get away with it? Well, that's just it. They're kind of getting away with it. It's not a, why does she win and he loses? It's they both could lose, but maybe they just happen to see his content versus her content. And so it really is not I say enter at your own risk because it really is required of you to be okay with losing everything. Again, I've built a personal brand both for myself and for my business. So I'm not really, I'm more bullish than maybe somebody who is like a newer brand who is maybe wanting to work with an agency to go create that content for them. They might be a little bit more cautious. What kind of content should we create? How should we navigate that? Whereas I'm a little bit like, let's just, rip the Band-Aid off and see what gets kicked off and see what sticks. So I definitely think you have the opportunity to do that. Just enter at your own risk. So Google, similarly, you can see their wording. It includes cannabis and products or services marketed as facilitating recreational drug use or ads for instructional content about producing, purchasing, or using recreational drugs. Facebook says they will not allow content that shows the use or sale of recreational drugs. This also includes companies that strictly sell CBD and CBD related products. So again, this wording is coming directly from them. And as we just highlighted, CBD is federally legal. Why are we having the same rules as Facebook? One thing to highlight and to differentiate kind of between social media and your website, again, social media is a closed platform. What that means is you don't own that content. Facebook owns your content. Google owns your content. YouTube owns your content. They're great for spreading awareness for your brand, again, for like helping create educational content and things like that, but it's at your own risk versus the website that you own, especially if you're on a platform like WordPress, which is a platform that I built my website on. WordPress is open source. Open source means nobody owns it. The owner of the content owns it. And so anything that I put on my website is stuff that I own versus anything that I put on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. It's really fair game for them to pull from the platform should they not like what you're producing. YouTube says while it maintains that it allows educational content, it prohibits channels from linking to sites that sell cannabis. If you can't tell, I think one of the biggest strains is trying to sell cannabis. And so again, on the next slide, I'll kind of highlight what some of those other things are. But TikTok's another big one. They are owned by the Chinese government. And so China is a little bit more conservative than perhaps America is in that regard. And so TikTok is unfortunately pulling a lot of cannabis content. In fact, I have a friend who had over 1 million followers on TikTok. She was selling cannabis greeting cards. So she wasn't even selling products that touch the cannabis plant. She was selling greeting cards and making cannabis related TikTok content. Had been super successful for her. Her reels and her TikToks were very funny. And then last week I heard that TikTok pulled her off the platform. And so sometimes you can petition back to these platforms and kind of be like, hey, why was my content pulled off? I'm selling something legal or something that is not, intended to promote drugs or illicit drugs or things like that. But again, because it's a closed platform, it is ultimately that company's decision whether they want to allow your content to exist on its platform or not. So these are some of those rules, best practices for digital cannabis ad compliance. So it seems like a lot of red tape. It kind of is if you can think of how great advertising on social media is for like a small retail company. Like, great, you make clothes, you want to sell your clothes. There's all these cool integration buttons that allow you to post a picture of yourself in an Instagram post and have a direct link to Instagram shop that shirt right from your screen. Unfortunately, cannabis doesn't get the same luxury, even though most of us are operating legal, whether we're in a legal medicinal or recreation state or operating federally legal under the hemp law. And so these are just kind of things that you need to keep in mind if you want to remain compliant and want to remain in good standing. So don't publish anything that references your prices. Don't publish anything that references a sale, a discount, and so on. Don't publish anything that says you offer any type of cannabis product or service for sale. So really just avoid like dollar signs, avoid attributing monetary value to any product that you're putting on these social media platforms. Don't publish a product menu. You can't publish links to your products, your store located, anything that would assume for a consumer to want to be able to go drive to sell with you or for you to sell to them. Those are off limits. And again, the caveat is, feel free to do these things. Like, feel free to post prices, feel free to post sales. Just know that the hammer could hit on you and you could have your content removed. So again, it's something that you might observe if you go check out my store's Instagram, Restart CBD. we have specials and sales all the time. I'm always highlighting products in my store because I'm a marketer. That's a channel I want to leverage to help educate and market my products. But have I had products and stories and reels flagged? Absolutely. And so it might get to a point where I get 3 slaps on the wrist at Instagram and then they shut my account down. I personally haven't had my account shut down, but again, it's just an FYI of this is kind of what they're saying you should follow. Feel free to follow it to be as most compliant as possible, but also just know that you can be a little bit more, playful with it if you don't mind getting cut off. Don't publish images of cannabis products, or cannabis paraphernalia. Definitely no suggestion of health or medical benefits, and no elements that could appeal to children, so cartoon characters. So ads, I think, are opening up in the cannabis space with some of these platforms. I'm certainly seeing people advertise on Instagram. You're seeing people where they're not saying CBD, they're saying like a wellness tincture, or they're not saying, CBD helps with inflammation. They're being like, I use this after sports recovery. It's very like abstract. So again, I'm seeing people do it and they're getting away with it and they are being compliant with these platforms, but it's a little bit of, you have to dance around it. It depends on how much time you have, how much money you have, and how much resources you want to spend kind of testing these platforms out. So this is kind of to sum it up. One account may get away with publishing posts that blatantly violate the guidelines, while others are deleted for simply pushing the edge of those boundaries the tiniest bit. This applies to both plant touching and non-plant touching businesses. So again, I shared the story of my friend with her cannabis greeting card business. I often sometimes reflect on owning a dispensary. So I sell pre-rolled joints, I sell flour, I sell oil. Those are products that are plant touching, versus my friend, she sells greeting cards. There's nothing cannabis related other than the graphics on her cards. And unfortunately, it doesn't really matter what you're selling. These platforms kind of lump it all the same. And it's really your discretion how you want to navigate forward and ultimately be successful on these platforms. So there are some successes when it comes to advertising. I like to call them kind of like, guerrilla marketing, or just kind of like more local marketing efforts. And these are opening up more and more as the industry kind of continues to evolve. But influencers are a great way for you to leverage social media. Again, it's not that the influencer can get away with posting that content and you can't. It just creates a barrier that it's not coming from a cannabis specific account. So for example, you might have a local health and wellness influencer in your demographic geographical area, and they might be a really big fan of your CBD edibles. So working with them to promote your edibles for sale or for educational purposes might be a better avenue for you than you posting directly on your own platform. There's also the opportunity for local events. Here in Austin, we sponsor and participate in local events all the time. There's not really a lot of compliance regulation around those things. It's really just event to event. So I encourage you to get creative, kind of get into different niches. So we are here in Austin. Austin is live music capital of the world, and music and cannabis go pretty hand in hand. So we'll sponsor concerts or music related events as just another way to get our brand out there that doesn't require us to have to kind of deal with some of these red tape areas that are kind of squeezing the industry right now when it comes to advertising and being compliant on social media platforms. You can produce useful native content to educate and inform your audience on your website. Your website, again, you own the content. As long as you're on an open source platform website, it's a safe space for you to put as much information as you want on there. Just be careful, don't make medical claims. That's kind of, the big deal with that. Podcasting has little to no regulations against cannabis. I run a cannabis marketing podcast, To Be Blunt Pod, and we have no problems. I've never had any challenge for both what I say on the podcast, to what I can sponsor on the podcast, to what I can produce, and how I can kind of promote that. So if you're a brand who's looking for ways to market that might be a little bit more compliant and you don't have to worry so much, you can sponsor podcasts. You can be guests on podcasts. Those are great marketing activities for you to extend your brand and not worry about the compliance part. And I'm seeing radio stations, print magazines, and local publications open up more and more. So you're able to leverage these publications and radio stations. Again, it's probably a little bit more niche because it might be local publications or local radio stations, but they don't have as strict compliance regulations as perhaps being on social media, which obviously social media is great if you want to get to the masses. But because the way that cannabis is kind of operating right now, it's definitely like a local first approach. And so I'm leaning into more of these local advertising opportunities than trying to go do something at a national scale on a social media platform. And then the last thing I'm highlighting, AdSuite.io just got launched. It's actually a digital advertising platform for the cannabis industry. It was built by Enlighten, which is a huge cannabis technology platform that operates in a bunch of different dispensaries. And I just I encourage you to go check it out. It is a resource, and you can actually manage it yourself versus having to go hire someone to manage your ads. Now it's new. I personally haven't played with it, but I just read the press release on this. And so I wanted to highlight it for you that should you want to play with digital ads, there are platforms that will allow you to be operating and compliant and can extend your brand and marketing that way. The last kind of piece I want to highlight is product labels. So there's definitely state and federal regulations to be mindful of. I know that if you're operating in the medical marijuana market or the recreational marijuana market, there are very specific regulations on what your labels say. So again, I encourage you to go to your specific state's laws pertaining to cannabis and look at what it's actually asking you. But these are some high level things that I'm highlighting for y'all just to be mindful of. You know, the more information, the better. I'm observing, again, especially reflecting on so many brands are just popping up and there's not a lot of information on them. And I ultimately feel like the consumer is the one who loses out the most. So being able to be, again, a good steward of this plant, show that you are trying to be compliant, showing that you are trying to participate with these laws and regulations as much as possible is ultimately, in my opinion, going to net you the best level of success. So name, quantity of contents, nutrition information, ingredient lists. Those are kind of like staples that I believe every label and every label and product should have. But other things to highlight, so specifically here in Texas, we have to include our manufacturer, packer, or distributor. So we have to include some of those like chain of custody information for us to be compliant with the state of Texas because we are a license holder. So again, if you are a license holder, there is absolutely documentation that associates that license that tells you exactly what you need to be to stay compliant. I encourage you to go look into that information. If you are a multi-state operator, be mindful of what's happening at a multi-state level. A hot topic right now is Delta 8 THC. Delta 8 THC is not necessarily federally legal. It operates in a very gray area. It's not even state to state legal, but there are some states that have actually come out and made it illegal. So for example, right now in Texas, it's quote unquote, legal and accessible for us to be selling, but Idaho, for example, it is not legal. And so I would not be in compliance if I sent my Delta 8 products to Idaho. And so you need to be mindful if you are shipping across state lines, what every state's regulations and requirements are to ultimately be in compliance with them. FDA warnings. And then the last one, of course, is just a QR code to the COA. I think COAs are tricky just because it's something that the industry is told that we need, but there's not a lot of understanding around it. But ultimately, it gives that confidence back to the consumer. It gives the confidence to the regulators. It's helping connect the dots back to making sure that you're selling in a product with integrity, a product that actually says what it is. And so again, if I'm shopping around and I don't see brands that have these pieces, which in my opinion are very like low hanging fruit things that should be on every piece of product, website, platform that you're operating on, then you're ultimately, in my opinion, having a miss, because I think those are just kind of things that people are expecting now when they're dealing business with brands. They want to make sure that, these brands are compliant. They are who they say they are. They are selling what they say they're selling. And so with that, that's the presentation. I hope you learned some things, or at least, had some of your thoughts validated. But I'm very social. I'm all over the internet. My name is Shada Tarabi. If you want to go find me on any of my social platforms, shoot me an email. I'm always happy to talk. And if you like this conversation and want more cannabis marketing, I encourage you to tune into my podcast, To Be Blunt Pod. I'm on Spotify, podcast, iTunes, all the great platforms. And I talk about cannabis and marketing every Monday with a new episode.
Thank you so very much. I have a special guest with us. She's been host at times, co-host, a moderator with CANNA World. And that is Miss Tasha Jackson. And she happens to have a question or two for you. Tasha, would you like to join in?
Yes, thank you so much. I wanted to just speak to the social media compliance because this past week, I had some really severe issues. And so I cannot highlight enough, and I can't say enough, that it's very difficult to be compliant. I did a bunch of research, and basically anything that's not FDA regulated is frowned upon, whether it is legal or not. And they don't always just shut your account down right away. And they also don't give you warnings, and they also hide your flags. So I want to point that out to the audience, that what I experienced just last week, again, I'm very careful about how I curate things or how things look. And what I found was they start very slowly taking things away. So Business Suite was gone, and I was like, that's interesting. And the ability to invite people from your personal profile from that page is gone. So they very, very slowly start taking things away. So if you jump on and you notice that you have limited functionality, or that you're losing functionality, that's what's happening to you. And unless you go into the dungeon of your account, that is how you will know that your account is on restriction or has been flagged. So I just wanted to bring that up, and thank you so much for all of the great information that you gave, because I don't think that, like you said, there's a lot of gray area. So I have another business where I do social media marketing, and I manage people's accounts, and I also post things on my business account. And so there was one, client that I had on there, and she sells CBD coffee. And then she was like, free pre-rolls with a bag of coffee. And then she has like pre-rolls falling. And that was totally fine. But as soon as I posted a commercial that had, the text had nothing to do with cannabis or CBD, it didn't have any images inside. There was nothing. Like, it had no, I was using all of the kinds of, plant medicine, and, not making any kind of medical claims or anything. It was literally like, hey, go check out this video. They cut it. They wouldn't even post it. I can't even upload videos anymore to another business profile that I post to. So again, being in compliance on social media is incredibly difficult, and I would urge everyone to always have a backup plan, because they also, I did create a workaround account and they shut that down without warning. So, again, I think it's important that people understand, because you invest a lot of time. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of energy to make sure that you're wording things the right way, because at the same time, you also still have to continue to do the marketing piece, right? And so you're like, how can I be creative about how can I describe cannabis without describing cannabis, so that the post doesn't get flagged or my account doesn't get flagged? And so again, I really would urge people to consider alternative options. Social media should not be, and this is my opinion, maybe Shada, you have a different opinion. Social media should not be your number one strategy to reach your customer base. So you please add to that if you feel that statement is appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was leading with your website as your number one real estate. First off, I'm really sorry that happened to you, but unfortunately, just like everybody else in this industry, that it's just kind of par for the course. Again, knock on wood, I've certainly I've had violations. I have had my account shut down, any of the properties that I operate online, but I of course absolutely have friends and hear stories every day of people that's not the case. And they're often very similar to yours, where it's, I did everything right. I read the blog post. I listened to the podcast. I checked out the, conference presenters, whatever notes, and then following things verbatim sometimes doesn't always net you a better experience on these platforms. So I agree with you. I wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, especially with social media. And so that's why I think if you're not investing in your website where you can post blogs, where you can put video content, where you can put video and photo content, that's a miss to me, because Google loves to scrape websites, and SEO is really impactful when it comes to how you show up in search rankings. So I would encourage you to invest in kind of that avenue. And then also kind of how I was like wrapping the presentation up with, cannabis, in my opinion, for better or worse, has become really localized until we have federal regulation and federal access to all the plant, which I think will open up a whole other door of challenges, because I don't know if I love interstate commerce. That just seems really scary for me with cannabis, my own personal 2 cents. But you look at kind of how you can't really ship across state lines. You are having to be more localized. And so that's a blessing then. participate in local events, participate in local radio stations. I get calls all the time from our local, like Kiss FM station, our local pop station saying, oh, do you want to advertise? iHeartMedia now opens up advertising to cannabis. I get calls from my local station, Fox, CBS, ABC channels. They're saying, hey, do you want to come advertise in the local TV? It's going to cost you money to advertise on these platforms. I didn't touch on it, but I'm a really big fan of, more like earned media versus paid media. I don't personally love to do paid media, but there is something with paid media that can ultimately, light your product or your message or your brand on fire and extend you to more people. But I'm a former corporate marketer. And so I have found that doing some more guerrilla marketing has netted me more goodwill. And that's just getting other people to write about me, getting on other people's podcasts, being my own podcast host. Like, these don't have any compliance issues. And so those to me are better spends of my time to go be a guest on a podcast or on a show, or getting featured in like, we have a Texas Hemp Reporter magazine. They just did a feature on us for free. It was an editorial piece that we earned because we're a top rated CBD brand in Central Texas. And so those are efforts that I personally invest in versus social media. But because I'm digital and I highlighted, I'm a little bit more bullish. I'm going to post pictures of me smoking joints and, eating gummies and putting on topicals and standing in front of plants, because maybe they kick it off, maybe they don't. And we all know that that's kind of the rub. They might or they might not. So I just encourage everybody to stay hopeful. If a door closes, open another door. These regulations are shifting all the time. You just need to kind of stay on top of it and really assess how risky you want to be. What's the reward for that risk?
Thank you so much. We are ready to segue into our final guest for this round of CANNA World Expo. Thank you so much, Shada, for joining us. It is really has been a pleasure having you on. You are a plethora of information out for everybody out there.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass everything on over to Denise to introduce our next guest.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to do a quick screen switch here. And we are now speaking about building a sustainable cannabis brand with CEO of Zenbar Farms, Noah Fishman. Thank you for joining us, Noah. How are things going on the East Coast?
Hello. Sorry, just figuring out the technology here. Things are going great. It's a beautiful day here in Vermont. Just got up to 70 degrees, which is, we just magnificent day. It's been a long winter for us, and really glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And you have quite the career in international development and sustainable agriculture. How did you end up in the cannabis industry, and what have you done with your professional background?
My background, my career was really in international development and local community development projects. I worked, right out of college. I was really excited about working in Africa. I had a real passion for getting out and traveling. So I pursued that kind of work and travel, and then coming back to Vermont, I got involved with local efforts to get sustainable composting systems together, and recycling and job training, workforce development. And along the way, I just more and more I found the nonprofit world to be challenging. I was really passionate about the issues, but I found the sustainability of that sector to be really difficult and sort of more slow moving than I wanted it to be, and thought I could make more impact by going into more social enterprise and business, and sort of wanted to combine all these things together. And long story short, I started a restaurant, and then through the restaurant, we really started to get into hemp and CBD, and doing cannabis events. Cannabis has always been a passion of mine and something I've been interested in, and we were able to really combine it at our restaurant, and then it really just kind of organically took off from there. We started to grow it and make food and drink, and you know, that kind of led to our current venture, Zen Barn Farms.
Great. Did you have a presentation you wanted to share?
Yes, let me figure out. I guess I hit share screen.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So on a local level, have you had any challenges with creating CBD beverages or offering cannabis through your restaurant? How well received has it been with the community?
Yeah, I mean, on the locally, I think it's been you know, an adventure. I think we've had a lot of support and a lot of excitement, and yeah, we've had a lot of the same kind of pushbacks that I think in gray areas that we're dealing with, like, you know, anybody in this business. But overall, you know, I've had just a lot of excitement that we're doing things that just had never been done before. So, you know, I think for the most part, it's been a lot of more support than the negative pushback. All right, so does not be able to record. Okay. Okay. You
Perfect.
guys, are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. So yeah, so my name's Noah Fishman. I'm the co-owner CEO at Zen Barn Farms. We're in Waterbury, Vermont. Small town, just you know, a few thousand people live here, but we're really in this like tourist corridor in central Vermont. You may have heard of places like Ben and Jerry's, Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, Alchemist Brewery. There's a bunch of famous brands that have popped out of our little town here. So we are small, but we have a lot of really cool things happening. You know, craft beer has really been a huge thing of late, and mountain biking, and lots of beautiful farmland around here. So it's the kind of place that, yeah, we're really close to nature, and we're close to the land here. We spend a lot of time outside, skiing, biking, and you know, I grew up here in Waterbury, and coming back to my home after traveling and doing all this work, I really wanted to, you know, combine all my passions into something that would truly be something I can leave to my kids and their kids and future generations, which I think is really at the heart of what a sustainable business is supposed to do out here in the world. And so I'm just going to tell a little bit of our story of how we developed our business, some of the you know, aspirations we have, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that we saw, and how we're trying to pursue a truly sustainable, local, community-based cannabis brand. And my hope is that it's, you know, we're telling our story. It's part of a bigger story of how we can make this industry something special that I think a lot of us, you know, don't want to just see cannabis be another industry that has the same old way of doing business, and that we can do things differently. So we started, you know, this as a small family farm is one aspect, and you know, we came back. Like I said, we were living in Washington, D.C. about 13 years ago. My older son that you can see there with the long locks, when he was born, we decided to move back to Vermont, and he's 13 now, and went back to my family's land. We built a house on the land. We have about 42 acres. I grew up walking around this property, you know, walking through the brook, hardening my feet on the rocks and burying myself in the mud, and uh, making forts in the woods, skipping stones, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I didn't really think about it much as a kid, but as an adult now, that really formed the basis of my sense of place, home, my relationship with nature and with the ecology around me. So, you know, as I came back to Vermont and worked in a bunch of different nonprofits, I ended up in wanting to really get into business and expand the impact of what I wanted to do through the business sector and not be not as much, through focusing on the nonprofit sector. And I so went off to get an MBA. During that time, my brother, you can see pictured here next to me in that with the One Love picture there. He was also kind of searching around and wanted to start a bar. His dream was to always be like Sam from Cheers and just have like a neighborhood bar, bring the community together. So right next door to us, there was a restaurant. You can see pictured here. That's now Zen Barn. And this is an old dairy barn converted to a restaurant in the 70s. This is actually my first job. I used to walk my where I grew up is right down the road from here. I used to walk over here to wash dishes, 14, 15 years old. And that was the really only time I worked in a restaurant my whole career. Um, this building, about 8 years ago, was up for auction. Nobody was biting on it. It was just sitting there. It needed a ton of work. Um, One day, as I was in school, my brother was poking around for a business location. He went to the auction for the building and had an investor friend who said, "Yeah, if it goes to this price, goes low enough, I'll buy the building. You can do whatever you want with it." So they walked out, long story short, of that auction with this building. And so my brother calls me later that night and says, "All right, I think you're in business school, right? I guess you better start making a business plan." So I went to work. It was an exciting opportunity. It was this building that I really was connected to. I knew well, and it's kind of in the center of the community, like between the downtown and Waterbury Center, where a lot of the houses are, and a lot of developments happening with people, up in the dirt roads and all that. So it's kind of right in the middle of town, and it's a great central place to gather. So we really, knowing the community and growing up here and seeing what we want to do, and with our lens of the kind of change we want to see in our community and in the world, we put together a concept that combined a restaurant, a live music venue, and a wellness studio upstairs. So you can see here pictured in the center of the wellness studio. This was the old hayloft, and then downstairs we had the idea for the restaurant. So we successfully launched the restaurant. We started a vibrant community around this. We became a real destination in the area for live music, having now had many famous performers coming through, and we had regular yoga and wellness classes up until COVID hit this last year. So along the way, hemp became legal. We started this in 2016. I think by 2017, Vermont established a legal framework for hemp, and we were excited. We were always advocates for cannabis and always dreamt of growing and doing more with cannabis. So as soon as we were able to, we started growing hemp in our backyard, in our property, and started doing events at Zen Barn that became very well known. We had our annual 420 parties. We had hemp and hops dinners, which involved multi-course, fixed price meals where we were really bringing incredible farm to table food together with really great craft beer that we're known for in the area, along with hemp infused foods. So we could show like the interplay between the flavors and the effects of all these different elements and have a really fun experience. So those events were really popular. Our cannabis drinks really took off, and people loved the idea that they could come in and, maybe not drink alcohol for a night and have a nice CBD cocktail. We were the first place in the state of Vermont to try that out in the cocktail program, and went through the process of getting our local liquor control board to actually approve it, which they had never been asked before. So it was a bit of a process there. But we really pushed forward right from the beginning on like creating a culture and community around cannabis, live music, food, drink, all together. These are some pictures of one of our 420 parties where we built a 20-foot tall sculpture that was loaded with fireworks. A local incredible sculptor, Chris Cleary, built this and has a fire dancing troupe. So you can see we had hundreds of people here, and we did a big kind of symbolic festival where, you know, we had live music afterwards and food getting passed around. And this also brought together, this was just on the eve of our legalization bill that was just passed this year. And we were also really pushing and advocating for legalization. And we had some leaders who were involved in that process present and speaking at this event as well. So yeah, you can see, you know, our cocktails really became popular with the CBD leaf garnish and our food. And we managed to, this actually helped a lot with our restaurant too. As a new restaurant in an area with a lot of food options, we became differentiated and really well known for our inclusion of CBD and cannabis on the menu. So out of all that, out of the restaurant really birthed our CBD and cannabis brand, which we built off the brand to develop Zen Barn Farms, which is both a product line as well as a retail store and a cannabis education center, which I'll talk about a little more later. But this is all pretty new for us. We had developed a small line of products last year with some tinctures and topicals using the hemp that we grew on our family farm. And then another sort of serendipitous opportunity emerged where an existing CBD shop had gone out of business just around the corner from us. You can see in the picture here the shop with the kind in front of it. That's another sculpture built by that same artist who built the cannabis sculpture. And that's the base floor of that is our CBD store that we moved into just in August of this year. And it's right around the corner within about a half mile of the restaurant. So it's right on the same little strip. And this is actually right on Route 100, basically the next building after Ben & Jerry's factory, which is the #1 tourist destination in Vermont. So we really had a vision to create a cannabis center of excellence where we can both sell products, but also educate our community and have a agritourism component where we can showcase the growing, the processing, and the product of cannabis in all its glory. So as we build this out, our plan is to have that front area to be a demonstration grow, place where we can do workshops, and we also have a space inside where we can do additional interior workshops, job training, education as well, in addition to the retail store itself. So our farm, you know, is on that family property that I grew up on, again, right next door to Zen Barn, all on this tight little strip within a mile, you know, within about a square mile. We do a small grow. We're trying to intentionally keep things small. We have pretty good amount of property, about 42 acres that we could expand, and we've thought about it. But every time we've tried growing this plant, we've found that we've been wanting to put a lot of attention and really learn the plant before we expand the scale. So, you know, we've started very small and we've grown just for our products really. And we've noticed as a whole in Vermont, a lot of folks have grown a lot of cannabis or a lot of CBD products or CBD flower that is sitting in fields, not getting harvested or sitting in storage because they don't have a source to sell it. So we didn't want to end up in that situation. So we're really growing just what we need to process into oil for our product. And even smokable product, we're actually working with some partner farms who are really focused on the smokable segment because we realize that that's also an area that takes more work. We have a lot going on, so we've focused on what we feel like we do best. We've also, you know, we realized early on that we needed to really achieve our goals and we wanted to have more of a vertically integrated model, yet we didn't have the resources to pull it all together ourselves. And we've done that through partnerships. We have a really close relationship with a state-of-the-art CO2 extraction lab, again, within 20 miles of our facility, so very local. And we approached them as a retail partner to their existing lab facilities. So they had all the technology, they had all the science and the ability to do extraction formulation, but they did not want to sit there and deal with customers and promote and market what they do. So we developed a nice relationship where we're selling the services and we're marketing the product that they have, and we're also getting a chance to really get in deep with research and development, with learning and hands-on approach to really getting our products made and kind of coming up with innovative products that really are meeting the needs of the customers that we're in touch with every day. So that's been a really nice relationship and something that we're building on as we go. I would also say that this lab also was really important for us to partner with, to be able to have opportunities for education, not just for ourselves, but for the industry. We really endeavor to create a education program where we can bring in folks from around the country to come to Vermont to learn every aspect of the industry, from soil to farming and growing side of things, to retail operations, product development, and lab operations as well. So our products, we've recently sold out of our first batch from last year of products that we made, and we are working on next round where we have a lot more products that are really tailored to our customers' needs, as I mentioned, and also feature some really cool initiatives and sort of progress I think we've made as a brand, both in terms of quality of the product and in terms of our sustainability. One of the things that we've noticed is people are coming into our store with very specific needs and real issues. They're not. Some people are using this recreationally, and I'm talking about CBD because we're not legal to sell other cannabis products at this point. But in terms of the CBD market, people have real issues, and we've learned a lot about those issues. And so we're targeting and doing more focused formulas, in collaboration with our lab, that deal with very specific issues, from sleep to anxiety to pain and things like that. So really excited about that. We've also made some real leaps forward with sourcing materials that are more sustainable. We're working with a really, really cool fair trade olive oil company out of Palestine that has put together a cooperative of Palestinian farmers and makes, hands down, I believe, the best olive oil in the world. Really, really incredible stuff. We have also another product using fair trade shea butter from Ghana, and proceeds, partial proceeds from that product will go to support the development of a school out there a friend of mine has been working on for many years. And so all that, those kind of things really hit where the confluence for me of where my activism and community development work can mesh together with our product line in our this new business. Overall, we really try to vet partners who share the same vision for regenerative farming that builds healthy soils, closing the loop as much as possible, eliminating waste, and being transparent and accountable, both in terms of lab testing and all that, but also in terms of their mission and their reason for being in business. We've put forth a program here, Cannabis for a Cause. All of our products and our retail sales, any money we bring in, 1% goes into a fund, and we donate that to organizations that are doing work that we feel really aligns with our mission and that advances the industry as a whole. And I think for us, this was just a thing that puts us in line with other businesses and other sectors that we love, that have spearheaded the idea of social enterprise and business being able to do good in the world. So we view this as a real starting point and not the end, but a starting point for engaging and partnering and putting our money where our mouth is in terms of our business. And, it's not easy because when you're starting up a business, you're usually not making money and we're not making profits. So we're taking this money out of our pocket, and and that's why we think the 1% on gross is really important and not a profit based, because even we believe that entering into this industry, given the historic injustices being done, we have to find ways to start to undo those things. And this is reflected in the type of organizations we're working with. We started local, and we actually not just helped fund, but we founded with a bunch of other community members the Waterbury Area Anti-Racism Coalition. We helped design, the branding of this organization, as well as organize meetings, following some of the Black Lives Matter protests. We had our own gathering here in Waterbury, which was the first, this town that's 99% white and thinks that they don't have these issues for the most part. It's the first time they've ever seen anything like this. So we organized a rally. This Waterbury Stands with Black Lives Matter banner was something we designed and helped install in town and got approval through our select board to be able to display that in town. And now, my wife, who's also a co-owner of the business, has been working really closely with this coalition and the local school system, and really trying to develop an anti-racism platform for our town and try to help educate and move this issue forward. We've also partnered with some other national level organizations dealing with key issues that we think are facing, that are intrinsic to this work. Getting people out of prison that have been arrested for, possessing cannabis seemed like something that is just essential. And we love the work of Last Prisoner Project, and we have them in our rotation to give through our Cannabis for a Cause program. And then the Loveland Foundation is a new one for us that we really are excited about, as we've seen through COVID and the confluence and intersectionality of COVID combined with the racial equity issues and all the tumultuousness of the protests that have been going on during this period and the isolation. Loveland Foundation is working on mental health, really targeting BIPOC community, and we're going to do a whole campaign over the next few months to talk about mental health and its relationship with cannabis, with the isolation we've all been facing, and how we can address this, in particular in the BIPOC community. So, our bringing this all together, from our brand to the different elements of what we're doing, we've always had this concept of a cannabis education center, and we're planning to launch this in this summer. COVID sort of put a little bit of a stall on this, but we have another space, and we also have a few other spaces at Zen Barn, as the restaurant and the event space, as well as at our Zen Barn Farm CBD store, where we intend to bring people, particularly BIPOC folks from around the country. We want to bring them to Vermont. We want this to be a center where people can come, they can get some time away from their businesses, away from the busy lives they lead, to retreat, to network, to get some job training. We want to offer apprenticeships, and be able to really have a place that can help empower BIPOC people to get into this industry in a real way. Across the country, many of the equity programs seem to be falling short, despite good intentions, and we feel like we can play a role even in a place like Vermont that's 94% white, to really help train and empower the next generation of entrepreneurs and employees and leaders in the cannabis industry. So I guess, overall, our approach is really partnership based, and we're excited to work together to build a cannabis industry that is hopefully sustainable. I think that's still, sustainability, I find, is a very difficult concept to grasp, especially in given how unsustainable we seem to be heading in this world. but with a love of our place, which it all comes down to, and a real sense of our community and understanding of our past and how we can move this together. I think we can really achieve something great with this industry, and we're very excited to do that. We're happy to be involved here in Vermont. We're also looking to build partnerships more broadly. We want to bring people out here. We want to get people to see what we're doing. We can host conferences, retreats, job training events here. We're also available to come, out and help and bring what we've learned so far as a small business and trying to operate in this space of cannabis, social justice, sustainability, CBD, looking at the next year of moving to the dispensary world. We want to collaborate and build partnerships with other like-minded businesses. So that's pretty much all I have for the presentation part. Happy to answer questions, chat further. You can get in touch with me and our team, through our social media, website, and my email's there if anybody wants to get in touch directly. But thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here, and excited to talk more and connect.
Thank you, Noah. That was awesome. Your farm is incredible. There we are. That to me is just a beautiful example of sustainability, beyond farm to table, what the farm is doing for the community, and that the community is collaborating with you and showing appreciation. So when it comes to building a sustainable cannabis brand, what advice do you have for other business owners that are in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, the way I really think of place and, finding your place, like really understanding where you are and what the environment is and the ecology, really can push us towards the right decisions. I think very often we get stuck in sort of the technical aspects and focused on one aspect of sustainability, but sustainability is holistic, and it requires, I think, to truly be sustainable, it requires us to really understand our community. So I think what we've done is try to build it organically, starting from a love of our place and our community, and engaging our community as a whole in a process of really defining what that is and what it can be, imagining the future, but also really, because if we start going too far past where our community's at, they're not going to be comfortable and they're going to reject everything. I've had little pushbacks. If we go too far in one thing, we try to push an agenda, all of a sudden you lose the very people you're trying to have come along, because sustainability is a community effort. It has to be. We can't act alone. So I guess that's kind of many things involved there, but I think really starting with your place, understanding it, seeing what are the trees like there, what's the soil like there, how's the water, and who lives there and who used to live there, and how do we sort of understand our place in history here.
So if I understand correctly, I mean, you've got multiple facets that compose your business model. You have the farm, you have the restaurant, you have your products. With the World Health crisis that's happened, has it impacted all of them or just part of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's impacted everything. It's changed everything. It's changed a lot of our plans. I mean, it begs for resilience, and I think that's an important piece of sustainability we have to acknowledge, is that like nature is very resilient. They can deal with many things, and crises thrown at them, and natural disasters, things happen, and I think we can learn from that. And the restaurant, has been really difficult through COVID. We've stayed open. We've stayed nimble. We've gotten as efficient as we possibly can, and it's been a huge challenge. We're a live music venue. That's also been a huge challenge. We pivoted in 10 different ways. We've done live streaming. We've done almost everything you can imagine. We opened the CBD store. We were poised to open that in April. We were going to launch on 420, probably like every good cannabis business. March came around and COVID was raging, and we weren't sure if we were going to continue. And so we kind of just jumped in there. We're like, all right, the restaurant's going to slow down. Let's bring our crew over and start working at the cannabis store and build this out together. And so we brought a lot of our staff over and started working on building the retail store out. So we just really remained agile. It's been it's been incredibly, almost impossibly hard to keep going. But we've managed to prove that we're still here and we're still, pushing forward and making some good progress.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. And I know I will be in touch with you because I have a recommendation for helping to grow your business, possibly outside of the state. So that's what we do. We connect the world, and we tend to connect the businesses that present with other presenters that have solutions that can enable growth. So Tasha, did you have any questions for Noah?
Yes, I thought about it. I had questions, but then your presentation answered all the questions that I had. So I had to come up with the new questions. So I have two questions for you because I'm a former teacher, so I'm a former educator. I was an English teacher for over 10 years. And one reason why I got into education was due to social equity. And I wanted to give the same experience to low income kids or more at-risk kids, give them the same level playing field as any other person would have. So my question to you is, why do you find it important that your company participates in social equity projects?
Yeah, I guess it's way before cannabis. We were doing this work. So I view this work of like repairing the world as part of that's what we're doing. And cannabis is a vehicle, I think, that can help do that. My wife's an educator. She's been working in this kind of work for a long time. When we lived in DC, we were involved in all sorts of projects all the time, like in our volunteer time and our professional work. Both of us have been involved as activists, as people that are trying to make the world a better place. And when you look at the cannabis industry, it's not only that cannabis was largely used as a tool of oppression in this country, and that there's a lot of injustice that was done. I think that propels us, I think, in this industry to maybe try to right the harms of the past, in particular. But I also view it as like cannabis and the people that I've known throughout my life that are into cannabis, I think have a different paradigm that they want to move us to. They have a strong sense of justice, and they have a strong sense of equity. And I think we have a real chance as me and my community organizer mindset. I'm thinking this is an opportunity. We have some momentum, and we have an industry that we can build that's going to be like a powerful force for this. So we can bring in the money, and we've got a lot of momentum where people want to make some real change. So I think it's an opportunity, and I think we have to do it. We're seeing that equity is, it's probably the issue of our time, in terms of finally like righting the wrongs of the past. It's like, how long are we gonna stand by and watch this happen? We're sick of it. We're sick of it. So I think the time is right, and the cannabis industry has so much power and potential to really make an impact that that's part of what's really propelled us into this. Is like, wow, we could make some real change here. And if we can if an industry can emerge that can really make a big impact, I think this is it. It seems like this is it. And there's a lot of interest in empowering BIPOC people to get into this industry. I think we are one of probably a very small number of what are considered BIPOC owned businesses in Vermont. so people have been looking to us like, you know, and we're sort of like, they're now like, all right, well, here's an example of this in action, you know, of a BIPOC business that can do this. And so we at first we were resisting that, and now I think we're saying, all right, we're going to own that, and we're going to bring a lot more people into that tent too. So we really want to sort of embody that example and show that we can do this, and you know, push if we have an opening, you know, push as far as we can.
I appreciate that, because there were several other presenters that were on that were also speaking about socially equitable programs that they're also involved in. And so, you know, companies that are giving back to the community, of course, that's an important thing, but why do it in the first place? And so that's, since you're our last speaker, that's what I kind of wanted to end with, is why is it important to give back to the community, especially in this industry, and what impact we as industry leaders can have in creating social equity programs and contributing to social equity programs. Sorry, I'm like, I've been up since early this morning. So I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate your, you know, drive to be a community organizer, to educate, to do all the things that you're doing. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pass it back over to Denise, because we have to wrap up. Sadly, I always look forward to Canna World, because there's so many different opportunities. There's so much information. We have so much fun here. And anytime that it's time to say goodbye, I always get sad. So.
Oh. Well, we will see you next Saturday, our Soul Sister. So we have a jam-packed agenda for next Saturday for day 2. Noah, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you to all of our media moderators and our media partners. We will be giving away prizes on 4/20 to help celebrate our 1-year anniversary, including remedy rolls from Uncle Goodknife. He'll be on the program next weekend explaining that, as well as some CBD oils, and of course, alcohol-free hand sanitizer for public safety. Also some hemp foods, lots of different products. We have these incredible 420 candles that we'll be shipping out to some lucky winners. Stay tuned next Saturday, April 17th. And if you'd like to register for the prizes, go on to the website, cannaworldexpo.com/register. Let us know who you are, where you're at in the world. The only thing we ask is if you could cover the postage, and the prizes are free. So we'll be announcing those on 4/20, special Canna World broadcast on 4/20. Any final words, Jessica?
Oh, you know what? This has been wonderful. By the way, check your messages. And thank you, all the presenters, all the attendees, everyone who has watched. This has been quite the journey that we have been on since last year when we started this. And it has just grown into this wonderful event of its own. There's nothing like it out there, and it's fantastic being able to share globally this incredible information from around the world that can be taken, whether it's some presenters here in the US, the information can be passed around the world, or vice versa, somewhere around the world, and it's here. What a blessing this has been, and it has been an honor to be on this journey with my sister.
Oh, thank you. All right, so it's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Saturday.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye for now.